Browns insider Mary Kay is in serious trouble after lying on Shedeur Sanders. Dang, Mary Kay got Jamie Foxx, aka Willie Beeman, calling her out too. How she still have those credentials, but moving forward, Mary Kay is in serious trouble right now for lying on Shedeur Sanders. You even have Jamie Foxx calling her out. Yes, Jamie Foxx. I'm going to play this video clip and let you guys hear exactly what she was lying about as far as trying to defend Kevin Stefanski, and then I'm gonna give you guys my thoughts.
What if the biggest NFL story this week had nothing to do with a touchdown, a trade, or a training camp hit, but instead involved a Hollywood actor, a Hall of Fame father, and a veteran reporter getting publicly dragged on the internet for spinning the truth? Because that is exactly what just happened. Adam Schefter, the most powerful insider in NFL media, was on live television doing Shedeur Sanders' actual workout. 30-pound dumbbells, military presses, on ESPN. Let that sink in. And while that circus was unfolding, Browns insider Kay Cabot was busy doing her own kind of performance, defending Kevin Stefanski, rewriting the narrative around Shedeur Sanders, and getting caught in the process by none other than Jamie Foxx and Coach Prime himself. 2 words shut her down: knock it off. This is bigger than a quarterback competition. This is about media manipulation, double standards, and one young quarterback who keeps proving everyone wrong no matter how hard the machine tries to bury him. Are you Team Shedeur, or are you still holding out for Watson? One word: go. Drop a fire in the comments right now if you already knew the media was spinning this story. Let's see how many of you been watching closely.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
I don't think Shedeur had that kind of a high football acumen, because he does. But he was starting a little bit back further in the process of all the things that you have to do to go out there and play pro football, just in terms of the play calling and sliding the protections and managing the motions and all that kind of stuff. He just had to get up to speed on that stuff, but he has just gone lightning quick at coming up that learning curve. And here's something to remember. We have now heard from a number of people. He is in that office every single day with Kevin Stefanski, going over tape and learning this pro game. And I think that has helped him tremendously. So for the narrative that's out there that Kevin Stefanski has tried to sabotage him and that he doesn't like him, no. The reason why Shedeur has learned as quickly as he has is because of all that extra time that Kevin Stefanski has put in with him in that
Gridiron ground. Let's get into it. Here is something that has genuinely never happened before in the history of NFL media coverage. Adam Schefter, the man who has broken more major NFL stories than arguably any human alive, the guy with sources in every front office, every locker room, and probably every team charter flight, was sitting in an ESPN studio doing military presses with 30-pound dumbbells because of Shedeur Sanders. Not because of Patrick Mahomes, not because of Josh Allen, not because of a Super Bowl MVP or a future Hall of Famer. Because of a 23-year-old 5th-round pick from Colorado who has spent the entire offseason being told he needs to wait his turn and prove he belongs. And yet here is the most buttoned-up man in NFL journalism, doing the kids' workout on national television. That does not happen by accident. That happens because Shedeur Sanders has become something the NFL does not quite know how to categorize yet. He is not just a quarterback competing for a starting job. He is a cultural force. He is a media phenomenon. He is, as he himself put it, the algorithm. And he said that with full awareness of exactly what it means. He told reporters directly, "I understand my name is the algorithm and everybody's content creators. How could I ever get mad at somebody making any money?" That level of self-awareness from a 23-year-old is remarkable. Most veterans twice his age have never figured out how to navigate the media landscape the way Shedeur already has. But back to Schefter, because the details of what happened make this even more telling. They brought the dumbbells into the studio. They set up the segment around Sanders' actual training routine. and Schefter played along, joking about whether he was going to be part of the four-man quarterback competition, wondering out loud if Mike Tomlin would dock his pay if he missed a rep. It was funny, it was entertaining, but underneath the humor was something significant. The most trusted voice in NFL media was spending his airtime centered entirely around Shedeur Sanders. Not Watson, not Dylan Gabriel, not Joe Flacco. Shedeur. That is not a coincidence. That is the media following the gravity of the story, and the gravity of the story right now is Shedeur Sanders. Now think about what that actually communicates to the rest of the league. When Schefter locks in on a player, front offices pay attention, coaches pay attention, other players pay attention, and when he is literally performing that player's workout on live television, it sends a message louder than any headline: "This kid has arrived." The workout video that sparked the whole segment had already been circulating online. Shedeur in the gym, putting in serious work, building his body and his game simultaneously heading into training camp. It was not glamorous content. It was not a photo shoot or a brand moment. It was a player grinding, and that grind was compelling enough to make Adam Schefter pick up a dumbbell on ESPN.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
That tells you everything you need to know about where Shedeur Sanders stands right now in the NFL conversation. But if Schefter's gym moment was the entertaining part of the week, what Kay Cabot did next was something else entirely. For anyone who has been following the Browns' quarterback situation since the start of the offseason, Kay Cabot's recent comments did not come as a surprise. They came as a confirmation of something a lot of people had already suspected, that the narrative being pushed by certain members of the Cleveland media had very little to do with what was actually happening on the practice field. Let's go back to where this started. Earlier in the offseason, Kay was one of the loudest voices making the case that Deshaun Watson should be named the starter immediately. She wrote that the Browns should declare Watson QB1 as soon as possible, let the first-team offense start to cook, and that there was no time to waste. That was the line. Watson is the guy, Shedeur needs to wait, end of story. She also said plainly that Shedeur had about 6 weeks to close the gap, that he had plenty of ground to make up, that he would need to dazzle the coaching staff just to be considered. The framing was unmistakable. Watson was the presumed starter, Shedeur was the long shot. Then something happened. Shedeur started playing football. He showed up in OTAs and minicamp, and according to reports from The Athletic, made significant strides in his footwork and his ability to go through progressions quickly. His quarterback coach noted that Sanders had done a noticeably better job of aligning his feet to his potential targets and passing lanes. That is not a compliment thrown around loosely in a competitive quarterback room. That is a coach acknowledging real, measurable development. Meanwhile, Watson was inconsistent. He showed flashes of confidence throwing downfield, but lacked the consistency you expect from a 9-year veteran. He was making questionable decisions, playing volatile football from practice to practice, and not doing enough to separate himself the way a player with his contract and his draft capital should be doing. So what happened to the narrative? It started to crack. By the end of minicamp, Kay was saying that Shedeur came on really strong, that he applied pressure, that he rose to the occasion when it mattered. And she said her words, that if he keeps doing this in training camp, he is going to make this decision very, very difficult for Todd Monken. Let's be honest about what that is. That is a 180-degree reversal from someone who was calling for Watson to be handed the job before a single training camp rep had been taken. It is not an evolution of opinion based on new information gathered over time. It is a reporter chasing the reality on the ground after spending months trying to shape a narrative that did not hold up. And the frustrating part is not even the flip-flop itself. People change their minds. Reporters adjust their takes. That is normal. The frustrating part is the lack of accountability for how far off the original narrative was, and the speed with which it shifted the moment the evidence became impossible to ignore. The media does not lead the story here. It follows it. And when it follows it badly enough for long enough, eventually someone with a bigger platform takes notice. In this case, that someone turned out to be a Hollywood legend. There are moments in sports media where the story breaks out of its lane and lands somewhere nobody expected. This was one of those moments. And the fact that it happened this way, with these particular people involved, made it impossible for anyone to look away. A clip of Kay Cabot circulated online. In it, she was defending Kevin Stefanski's handling of Shedeur Sanders, framing the coaching staff's relationship with the young quarterback as fully supportive, hands-on, and positive from the jump. She talked about how Shedeur had been in the office every single day with Stefanski going over tape, learning the pro game, and that this extra time was the reason Shedeur picked things up so quickly. She specifically pushed back on any narrative suggesting Stefanski had tried to sabotage Shedeur or did not support him. And then Jamie Foxx saw the clip. For anyone who knows the film Any Given Sunday, Jamie Foxx played Willie Beeman, one of the most iconic fictional quarterbacks in football movie history. He is not a casual football observer. He understands the game, he understands the politics of the game, and he understands what it looks like when someone is being handled versus actually being supported. His response to the clip was 2 words: knock it off. No long rebuttal, no detailed breakdown, just 2 words that carried the weight of everything fans had been saying for months in comment sections and on social media and in independent YouTube channels like this one. 2 words that cut straight through the noise. And then Coach Prime responded. Deshaun Sanders, Shedeur's father, one of the greatest to ever play the game, looked at what Jamie Foxx said and posted a public thank you. Now, if you know Deshaun, you know that man does not spend his energy on things that do not matter. When he publicly co-signs something, he means it. That thank you was not courtesy. That was Deshaun Sanders telling the world Jamie Foxx was right, and everybody who has been paying attention already knew it. The reaction spread fast. Social media picked it up immediately. One account summarized it perfectly, pointing out that it was a genuinely bad look that Kay had gotten Jamie Foxx, known to football fans as Willie Beeman, calling her out publicly. And the consensus across platforms was the same. This was not a random internet pylon. This was 2 high-profile people with real credibility looking at the same footage and arriving at the same conclusion independently. Here is what makes it sting even more. The criticism was not that everything Kay said was fabricated. It was that she was choosing which parts of the story to tell. Acknowledging Shedeur's learning curve while painting Stefanski as the dedicated mentor who personally guided him through it, without ever addressing the moments throughout the season that made fans question how much genuine support Shedeur was actually getting from that staff. That is a selective version of events. And selective reporting over time becomes its own form of dishonesty. This is the part that fans, independent media, and apparently Hollywood actors are no longer willing to let slide without saying something. And what they are all pointing back to is a story that started much earlier in the offseason. Let's go back to the beginning of the offseason, because context matters here, and the full picture of what happened to Shedeur Sanders over the course of this quarterback competition is something that deserves to be laid out clearly. Kevin Stefanski and the Browns front office told the public that this was going to be a legitimate 4-way quarterback competition. Shedeur Sanders, Dillon Gabriel, Joe Flacco, and Deshaun Watson, all competing on an even playing field, all given a real shot. May the best man win. That was the official line. That is what got reported. That is what got repeated across outlets, and Kay's coverage helped reinforce that framing. Except it was never actually a 4-way battle, not even close. Anyone who was paying attention to the actual practice reports coming out of Berea knew from the jump that Shedeur was not receiving equal first-team reps. While Watson and others were getting the majority of work with the starting offense, Shedeur was rotating in with fewer opportunities, less live action with the top unit, and less time to build rhythm and chemistry with the receivers who would matter most in a real game situation. Think about what that means for a moment. If you are evaluating 4 quarterbacks but one of them is consistently getting fewer reps, less time with the starters, and less opportunity to show what he can do in game-like conditions, you are not running a fair competition. You are running a performance with a predetermined result and calling it a competition because it is easier to sell to the fan base than admitting you already made up your mind. And here is the part that should make Browns fans genuinely angry. Shedeur's numbers during that competition were better than all 3 of the quarterbacks he was supposedly being measured against. Better efficiency, better decision-making, better production overall. And he produced those numbers with less opportunity, fewer reps, and a lighter workload than Watson, Gabriel, and Flacco were each receiving. That is not a guy who needs to close the gap. That is a guy who was already ahead and was being quietly managed to prevent the competition from officially looking the way it actually was. The framing of this as a legitimate 4-man battle did real damage to Shedeur's standing heading into the season. It allowed people to suggest he had not truly earned his position when the evidence clearly showed otherwise. It gave cover to a coaching staff that, according to multiple independent observers and fan accounts that had been watching practice footage carefully, was not treating every competitor equally. And reporters like Mary Kay, who had the access, the credentials, and the platform to call this out and hold the organization accountable for running a competition that was not actually a competition, instead helped reinforce the official narrative. She wrote about the battle as though it were real. She wrote about Watson as though his experience alone made him the presumed frontrunner. And she wrote about Shedeur as though he was the one who needed to prove something extra, when in reality, the numbers said the opposite. When you lay all of that out, the Jamie Foxx moment stops being a celebrity call-out and starts being something more significant. It starts looking like accountability. At some point, the conversation has to come back to what actually happened on the football field. Because all the media criticism, all the credentialing debates, all the social media reactions from actors and coaches, none of that matters as much as what the numbers actually show. And the numbers in this situation tell a story that is significantly different from the one that was being sold to the public all offseason. Start with last season. Shedeur Sanders started 7 games as a rookie, coming off the bench into a struggling offense without the infrastructure, the offensive line, or the supporting cast that gives a young quarterback the best chance to succeed. He threw for 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. On the surface, those numbers look modest. A lot of analysts used those numbers to suggest he was not ready, that Watson should be the guy, that the 5th-round pick needed more time on the bench before being handed real responsibility. But here is what those analysts consistently left out of the conversation. Shedeur was a 5th-round pick thrown into a genuinely difficult situation without adequate protection, without reliable receiving weapons, and without the kind of consistent starter-level reps in practice that build the fluency a young quarterback needs to cut down on turnovers. He showed flashes. He made plays that a player of his draft position had no business making. He demonstrated the pocket presence and the arm talent that the people actually watching the film were already talking about. Now move to the offseason competition. The Athletic reported that Sanders made significant strides in his footwork and his ability to cycle through progressions efficiently. His quarterback coach specifically noted measurable improvement in how Shedeur aligns his feet to his targets and passing lanes, which is technical, specific praise that does not get offered casually by a coaching staff that is trying to manage a competition carefully. And in that same competition, where he was given fewer first-team reps than Watson, fewer opportunities to build rhythm with the starting receivers, and less live action to demonstrate what he could do, Shedeur still posted better efficiency numbers, better decision-making metrics, and better overall production than every other quarterback in the room. Watson, for all his experience, for all his history as one of the most gifted quarterbacks of his generation in Houston, was inconsistent in ways you simply cannot explain away. He occasionally threw with confidence downfield, but he was making decisions you do not expect from a 9-year veteran. He was volatile. He was unpredictable. And he was doing all of this while collecting on a fully guaranteed $230 million contract that the Browns surrendered 3 first-round picks to acquire. The contrast between what Watson's numbers and performance suggested and what the media narrative around him implied was enormous. And Shedeur's numbers, achieved under harder conditions with less support, pointed clearly in the other direction. So when Mary Kay was writing that Watson should be declared starter immediately with no time to waste, the question that never got asked loudly enough was, compared to what? Because the data did not support the conclusion. The performance on the field did not support the conclusion. The only thing supporting it was a predetermined narrative that the numbers were quietly dismantling every single day. There is a conversation happening around Shedeur Sanders that goes beyond the Browns, beyond the quarterback competition, and beyond any single reporter's credibility. It is a conversation about the way the NFL media ecosystem applies entirely different standards to different players depending on factors that have nothing to do with their performance on the field. And if you have been watching this story closely, you already know exactly what those factors are. Consider the jersey photo shoot. Shedeur was at the Sanders compound. He laid out every jersey he has worn throughout his career, from high school all the way through to his NFL debut. It was a personal moment celebrating a personal journey. He posted it. It went viral. And almost immediately, certain voices in the NFL media started using it as evidence that he had a character problem. Rex Ryan was one of the loudest critics. He said Shedeur needed to have more we than me. He framed the photo shoot as a sign of selfishness, as proof that the young quarterback was more concerned with his brand than with being a team player. LaShawn McCoy, who actually played for Rex Ryan in Buffalo and knows exactly what Rex's locker room standards looked like up close, shut that down immediately. His response was direct. This was a dude at his own home on his own time, celebrating his own journey. This was not a team event. This was not a distraction. This was a person honoring where he came from. And the panel discussing it made a point that cannot be dismissed. When Aaron Rodgers does something eccentric, it gets called personality. When Ben Roethlisberger showed up to situations with strong opinions and a big presence, it got called leadership. When Patrick Mahomes promotes his brand, does commercials, and builds his public image into something bigger than football, it gets called admirable. It gets celebrated. When Shedeur Sanders posts a jersey photo at his own home, it gets called selfish. That is a double standard. It is not subtle, and it is not new. But it is important to name it clearly because it shapes how stories get told and which narratives get amplified. It affects whose struggles get framed as character flaws and whose character flaws get framed as complexity or competitive fire. The same pattern shows up in how the quarterback competition was covered. Watson's inconsistency got framed as rust, as a player working his way back, as a veteran who deserved patience and the benefit of the doubt. Shedeur's development, which by every measurable indicator was moving faster and more significantly than Watson's, got framed as a gap that still needed closing, as a young player who still had something to prove. The evidence pointed one way, the narrative pointed another, and the double standard in how those two quarterbacks were described, evaluated, and written about in the Cleveland media tells you a great deal about why certain reporters are now getting publicly called out by Jamie Foxx and Coach Prime. Because when the gap between what you are saying and what is actually happening becomes wide enough, eventually people with platforms and credibility start to notice. And once they start talking, the story changes. To understand why this entire situation matters beyond the media drama, you have to understand the actual football reality the Cleveland Browns are sitting in right now. Because the decisions being made in that building this summer are going to define the franchise for the next several years, and the stakes could not be higher. Deshaun Watson is 31 years old. He has not played a full season in years. He is carrying the weight of the most controversial contract in modern NFL history, fully guaranteed at $230 million, and backed by a trade that cost the Browns 3 first-round picks. The expectations attached to that deal were enormous. The reality has been something very different. At his peak in Houston, Watson was genuinely one of the most electric quarterbacks in the league. He had the arm, the mobility, the football IQ, and the competitive edge that made him look like a franchise cornerstone for a decade. But that version of Watson has not shown up in Cleveland in a consistent, sustainable way. What showed up in practice this offseason was a quarterback who occasionally flashed that former brilliance, but could not maintain it from rep to rep, drive to drive, or practice to practice. Volatile is the word that kept appearing in independent reports. Unpredictable, making decisions that a 9-year starter should not be making. That is not the kind of performance that justifies being handed a starting job over a competitor who is outperforming you. And then there is Shedeur Sanders, who at 23 years old is heading in exactly the opposite direction. Every credible report coming out of Berea this offseason pointed toward a quarterback who was improving measurably, absorbing coaching at an accelerated rate, and building chemistry with weapons around him that makes him genuinely dangerous in a live game environment. He has got wide receivers like Denzel Boston and Casey Conception developing alongside him. He has got Harold Fanner Jr. at tight end. He has got Quinshon Judkins in the backfield. He has got an offensive line that is in a better position than it was when he was thrown into games last season without adequate protection. And he has got a head coach in Todd Monken, who has demonstrated real ability to design offenses that put young quarterbacks in positions to make plays and grow. The contrast between what Watson brings to this competition and what Shedeur brings is not even particularly close when you look at trajectory instead of reputation. Watson's trajectory is declining. Shedeur's is rising sharply. Watson's best football is behind him statistically and physically. Shedeur's best football is almost certainly still ahead of him. Reports have also surfaced suggesting the Browns could be looking to move Dillon Gabriel before the season begins, with some speculation that he is the likely odd man out in the quarterback room as the roster takes shape. That tidbit alone signals something important. The organization is beginning to narrow its thinking in ways that make the competition feel more real and more consequential than any carefully managed official statement has let on. Training camp is where this all gets decided. Pads on, real pass rush, game speed, no more controlled practice settings. That is exactly where Shedeur Sanders has been preparing to prove himself all along. Everything that has happened this offseason, the media flip-flops, the Jamie Foxx call-out, the Schefter gym segment, the four-way competition that was never equal, all of it has been building toward one thing: training camp. And now that rookies have reported and veterans are on their way, the moment that Shedeur Sanders has been preparing for is finally here. Todd Monken came into this offseason with a stated intention of naming a starter before training camp began. He said it clearly. He set the expectation. And then something happened that forced him to change his plan. Shedeur closed the gap faster and more convincingly than Monken or the coaching staff had apparently anticipated. So instead of a clean decision, Monken is now carrying the competition into camp. He has said publicly that he plans to continue alternating Watson and Sanders with reps, the same rotation that played out through the spring. He has also said something that matters more than the rotation itself. that ultimately he will play whoever gives the offense the best chance to score points, and that he will not know that until the competition moves into something closer to full contact, live game conditions. That is a significant statement, because it means the job is genuinely available. It means the weight of a $230 million contract and 3 first-round picks is not automatically enough to secure a starting role. It means that what happens on the practice field over the next several weeks is going to carry real weight in a real decision. And that should terrify Watson's supporters and energize everyone who has been watching Shedeur's trajectory this offseason. Because the conditions of training camp favor the kind of quarterback Shedeur is becoming, the live pass rush, the heat of real competition, the mental pressure of performing when something is actually on the line, these are the elements that expose inconsistency and reward the quarterbacks who are genuinely prepared. Watson has struggled with exactly those conditions. Shedeur has been trending toward handling them better with every passing week. There is also something to be said for the mental makeup required to succeed in a situation like this one. Shedeur has been doubted at every level. He was doubted in college until the results became undeniable. He was doubted in the draft process, and he fell all the way to the 5th round despite producing numbers that any other quarterback in that class would have been celebrated for. He has been doubted in Cleveland. He has been told to wait his turn, that the veteran deserves more time, that the competition is not really a competition. And every time, he has responded by performing, by improving, by forcing the conversation to shift in his direction, whether the people controlling the narrative wanted it to or not. That is mental toughness. That is not something you can manufacture through extra reps or better coaching. That comes from a player who knows who he is, knows what he is capable of, and refuses to let anyone else define the ceiling on his career. The media is finally catching up to what the numbers and the tape have been saying all along. Training camp is about to make that case even louder. And once the pads come on, the story writes itself. Here is where everything lands. A veteran reporter got publicly called out by Jamie Foxx and Coach Prime for protecting a narrative that did not match reality. The four-way quarterback competition that dominated off-season coverage was never actually equal. Shedeur Sanders outperformed every quarterback in that room despite having fewer reps, less opportunity, and less support than the player who was supposedly the presumed starter. Adam Schefter did a workout on live television for a 5th-round pick. That alone tells you something significant about where the real story is. The media chases narratives. It protects organizations. It applies double standards so consistently that most people stopped noticing years ago. But Shedeur Sanders has become the kind of player who makes those double standards visible because the gap between what the numbers show and what certain reporters say keeps getting too wide to ignore. Training camp is going to settle this. Not the articles, not the insider reports, not the carefully managed competition updates. The field is going to decide it. And here at Gridiron Ground, we are going to bring you every piece of that story without spin, without an agenda, and without protecting anyone's narrative. Drop a comment, are you Team Shedeur or are you still holding out for Watson? One word, go. Hit subscribe, because when this thing breaks, you want to be here first.
Coach Prime says, thank you, Jamie Foxx. In the video, Jamie Foxx said, knock it off. This person says, dang, Mary Kay got Jamie Foxx, aka Willie Beeman, calling her out too. Oh, you know what? Nah, this is a bad look. I agree.